Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are tackling a huge topic, death. But we're going to look at it from a completely different angle, one that challenges the very questions we've all been taught to ask. You know how it is. Whenever the topic of death comes up, this is almost always the first question, isn't it? It's the big one, the great unknown we all want an answer to. What happens after it's all over? But what if that's not even the right question to be asking? What if by being so obsessed with the after, we're actually missing the entire point? The source we're diving into today suggests that our whole approach here is, well, kind of backwards. Now, this is the question that changes everything. What if we stopped trying to peek behind death's curtain, and instead, we accepted that the life we're living right this second is actively designing and building whatever comes next. Like we're the architects of our own afterlife.
So how did we get so far away from that idea? This first section is all about how our modern world has ended up with this really adversarial, fearful relationship with death.
I mean, just think about it. Our culture today, which the source says is driven by a philosophy of realism, only focusing on what we can see and touch, it treats death like a failure. It's not a natural part of life. It's an enemy that we have to fight, something to delay with every medical marvel we can invent. And this way of thinking completely splits the act of living from the process of dying. And that's a massive shift in thinking. Our modern view on the left sees death as this unnatural enemy to be avoided. But for so many ancient societies, it was the complete opposite. It was a gateway, a totally natural phenomenon that you spent your whole life preparing for. It wasn't an end, just the next step in the journey. The source uses this really powerful metaphor. It says, our attitude is like an ostrich burying its head in the sand. By treating death as an enemy, we just refuse to look at it, hoping that if we ignore it, it'll just go away. But of course, it doesn't. Ignoring the inevitable just leaves you completely unprepared. So, if ignoring death is not the answer, what is? Well, that brings us to a totally different model. The idea that death is just part of a continuous natural development. The core idea here is a principle called natural development. And honestly, it's super simple. We all get this, right? The future is always born from the present. The health you have next year depends on the habits you have today. The source just applies that exact same unbreakable logic to the afterlife. It argues that it must be a direct continuation of the life we're living right now. And this isn't some wild new theory. In fact, it's an ancient one. It was pretty much the standard way of thinking in many pre-Abrahamic cultures. For them, living and dying were just two sides of the same coin, deeply connected as part of a single, unbroken journey. Okay, so if the afterlife is born from this life, how does that actually work? What's the mechanism? This is where the spiritual law of cause and effect comes in, the law of sowing and reaping. Think of it this way. Every thought you have, every action you take, it doesn't just vanish. It's a building block. Right now, in this very moment, you are laying the foundation and putting up the walls of the very environment you will step into after death. The logic follows this clear causal chain. It starts with step 1, your choices, your thoughts, your actions here on Earth. Those choices, in step 2, then directly shape your spiritual reality. And that leads right to step 3. The environment you've built becomes your direct experience in the afterlife. So now we get to the really personal part. Let's look at a few concrete examples of how this process of designing our own future reality actually plays out. It really plays out like a spiritual law of attraction. If your life is all about selfishness, about taking advantage of people, then you build an afterlife filled with other selfish people, and that means constant strife, a constant struggle for power. But if you live a life of altruism and you seek to help others, you create a world with like-minded souls, which leads to harmony and a shared sense of purpose. You literally get what you give. This is one of the most provocative ideas from the source. It says that any hell we experience isn't a punishment from some angry deity. No, it's justice. Because it's the environment we wanted, the one we built with our own desires here on Earth. The suffering just comes from finally getting the full, unfiltered version of what you asked for, surrounded by everyone else who asked for the same thing. So the goal is just to build a nice afterlife, right? Well, not so fast. This final section argues that any existence, whether it's here or in the hereafter, needs something way more profound than just comfort. It needs a purpose. I mean, think about that classic image of heaven, right? Floating on a cloud, life of total leisure, no responsibilities. Is that really the ultimate goal? The Source challenges that idea head-on. Would a life with zero challenges, with no work to do, truly be fulfilling? And the answer is a hard no. We see it on Earth all the time. People who achieve a life of pure idleness often end up feeling empty, meaningless. The Source argues that this exact same spiritual law applies to the afterlife. An existence without any purposeful activity, no matter how blissful it seems, would eventually become its own kind of torment. And this brings us to the final, really powerful takeaway from this explainer. The ultimate goal isn't just to avoid a bad outcome or to get an idle one. It's to recognize and then actually fulfill the unique place that you are meant to occupy in creation. And that brings us right back to our central question, but with a whole new depth. The real question isn't just what comes next, but what purpose am I building my life around right now to create what comes next?